and welcome to another devlog for Chronos, our habit tracking app built with Godot. We're excited to tell you all that we've released a closed beta of Chronos. The purpose of this was to gain insight into what people like or dislike, what features they feel are missing, and any other feedback they might want to share. It's taken a lot of effort to get the app to this stage, so here's a glimpse at some of the more interesting or challenging sections that we worked on in this last sprint.
At the start of the sprint, we added the history page to Chronos, where users can go to get a full history of all of their actions. This was a fairly quick feature to implement because none of the actions here are editable. We almost fell prey to scope creep by having this page update in real time with things such as editing or deleting actions, but decided to take an easy out with the same solution that we have for the analytics page, a refresh button. This feature also gave me an opportunity to improve how actions are stored on your device. Now, the save data contains a map of days to actions, allowing me to quickly grab any action that occurred on any given day, as opposed to having to loop through all the actions.
In addition to that rework, we also thought the Chronos icon needed a bit of clarification and refinement. The last icon was a generic bar graph colored with the Chronos colors. This didn't really get across the idea of being a habit tracking app, and this new icon is clearer, cleaner, and conveys the time tracking aspect of this app.
We had also gotten some feedback that users want a bit more of an indication that an action is currently being tracked. To achieve this, we added an active action animation. This feature was quick to implement at first, but then required some tests to ensure that it is functional in edge cases, like when the active action is deleted or when the app is closed and then reopened. As we started using the app more, we also noticed that we interacted with the timeline a lot, like all the time. So we needed some huge improvements to the rigid scrolling from our second sprint. After rebuilding scroll containers to work with the Godot Touch Input Manager last sprint, I had a good foundation for adding a flinging behavior to the timeline. Because scrolling seemed to be best tested through the feel of scrolling, I strayed from my usual test-driven development approach and worked on constant manual testing instead. Although I'm happy with how scrolling and zooming works at the moment, this feature took 21 different commits over 6 pull requests due to the number of bugs and unexpected behavior that popped up without the backbone of a clearly defined feature in unit tests. With all said and done, the user can interact with the timeline in several different ways. Scrolling and zooming have a nice little state machine tucked away in the code that checks to see if the timeline is idle, scrolling, or flinging. We can even enter a super flinging state if several flings occur in the same direction. Scrolling occurs through the Godot Touch Input Manager single and multi-finger drag inputs by moving the timeline based on the difference in position each frame. There's a bit of a hack taking these position deltas to anchor points than to time deltas, but it's necessary to keep a one-to-one scroll on the timeline with respect to your finger. The timeline also received a major improvement that we've been sitting on for a while, a current time marker. There's not much to this feature besides the anchor point being set every physics frame based on the current time, but even a simple feature can go a long way in improving the quality of the app. We also received some feedback from our beta testers and decided to quickly implement their requests. There were some great quality of life updates that we have overlooked while developing, such as larger ticks for hours, a 12-hour clock, and being able to tap outside of an action block to deselect it. This tap to deselect actually led to a nice modular control node of ours, the hide if touch outside node. This simple custom control node checks for a screen tap event and hides the parent node, or whatever selected node, if the touch event does not occur within the parent node. We were able to slap this little guy all over Chronos to make navigating throughout the app much smoother. Speaking of moving around Chronos much smoother, the timeline can now be navigated almost entirely with one hand. We ran into 2 major issues while using Chronos. It was annoying to zoom out to see large actions, and it was annoying to scroll out to have the active action start at a new time. This first issue was solved by a new bit of logic in the modular block controller that allows us to check to see if an action block is visible on the timeline. If not, we find the distance from the center of the timeline to the farthest anchor point on the action block. We then set the timeline length to a little more than twice this distance, so the selected action block is fully visible. Adjusting the zoom level of the timeline based on the slider was also a fairly quick fix. Although not optimal, the sliders fire a signal every frame that a finger is held on the slider, even if the change in position from the previous frame is 0. This allows us to always check the anchor point of the action block the slider is attached to, and if past a certain threshold, causes the timeline to zoom out if the slider is held. We just have to make sure to save the anchor point of the action block before the zoom, then plop the edge back down where it used to be, and everything is properly updated.
As we said at the beginning of this video, our app Chronos is finally in a closed beta. This took over 3 hours of fiddling with XCode, TestFlight, and Apple Store Connect, but we finally got it.
If you're interested at all in giving Chronos a spin, or talking Godot development, join our studio Discord. There's a link in the description below.
Richard and I have iPhones, and we wanted to be able to use our own app, so we had to learn how to get our app on TestFlight. TestFlight is an app that developers use to test their beta versions of their apps for iOS. It's great and easy for us because I have a MacBook, which means that after I export Chronos from Godot, I can open Xcode, run and analyze it, and then push it to TestFlight in under 2 minutes. Before you actually get to TestFlight or Xcode, you need to create an App Store Connect account, register your business, and create a new app profile. Out of the entire process, this part was the most straightforward. Once you've done that, you'll need to export your app from whatever program you used to build it. For us, it was Godot. For those who are also using Godot, here are the settings we used for Chronos. We also learned that it's best to save your exported project files outside of the folder that your Godot file is saved in, so just keep that in mind. The App Store Team ID is an identification code that you get when you register with the App Store. Once you have your export, navigate to it in your file system and open the Xcode project in Xcode. You'll have to download Xcode if you don't have it already. Once you have your Xcode file open in Xcode, make sure your run destination is your desired output. For us, we want to run our app on any iOS device. Then you'll want to click Product and then Archive. And once the Archives window appears, click Validate App in the right menu. If your app passes this automatic validation, then you're ready to move on to distribute the app. Once you click Distribute App, you'll want to choose whatever app you're using to test your app. For us, this was TestFlight and the App Store. Once you hit distribute, it will automatically be sent to TestFlight and be reviewed. This usually takes a minute or two for our app. You'll get an email once your build has been approved and posted to TestFlight, but if you want to check, you'll need to log into Apple Store Connect, navigate to the app, and under Builds, you'll click on iOS. When you get to the iOS Builds page, you should see where your build is waiting to be approved. And after those quick 100 steps, you'll have an app in TestFlight ready to share with your closest 10,100 friends. You'll need to register users to do this, and you can do this through the App Store Connect website as well. In this next coming sprint, we're going to continue polishing Chronos and adding a new feature we're calling goals. So far, any benefit someone would get out of Chronos has been up to their own interpretation of their data to create better habits for themselves. We think it'd be more helpful to have something to directly work towards, so we're creating habit goals. Habit goals will be created on their own page, allowing you to decide what actions you want to do and when, giving you a buffer to account for daily fluctuations.
You can check the completion of habit goals on the goal page to see if you're able to consistently hit your goals over a 3-week period. We also plan for these goals to be visible on your daily timeline so that you can have immediate rewards for achieving your goals, as opposed to just seeing a daunting progress bar slowly tick towards 100%. So far, we have some ideas for how these goals should look, and a very rudimentary implementation in Godot. If all this looks cool to you and you want to give it a spin, just another reminder to join our Discord to get added to the closed beta. Links in the description. And I think that about wraps it up for the last 2 weeks of work. We're excited to show off what the next 2 weeks will bring. Until next time.
Bye!
Bye!